Hi, I'm Valerie Bodell. Welcome to Comics Communication. As promised, you don't need to have any prior knowledge or skill of drawing to take this course. Also, you do not need to buy any books for this course. The syllabus is posted on D2L and you can read it in its entirety there, but there's a couple things I wanted to bring up in particular. Discussions are a large part of your grade. To get full points on discussions, you need to participate in the conversation. Just replying with, "I agree," is not going to be enough. You have to express your opinions and back them up with examples from the reading. My contact information is on my profile in D2L and on the syllabus, but I wanted to make sure that you know the best way to reach me is by email. I respond to emails generally within 24 hours, but I check email less often on the weekends. So please do not wait until late Sunday to read the assignment and all of a sudden realize that you don't know what you're supposed to do. Please read the assignments early in the week, email me any questions, and I'll have time to help you. The final project is a 5-page comic, but don't panic. Art is not the focus of this course. The focus of this course is learning to communicate using the comics medium. Some of you are probably artists. That's great. That's part of the process. But those of you who are not, watch the video demonstrating the use of stick figures, drawing stick figures, and a couple of other comics elements. And send me any questions or concerns, and we'll deal with it. We'll work it out. The art should not be a stumbling block for you in this course. Some of you are probably tech savvy. Another great thing. You won't have any trouble sending me your assignments. For those of you who do not feel comfortable with technology, the only assignment for which you have to send me images is the final project. And you have some options. As long as I can read your comic, you can send it to me that way. So you can scan it, you can fax it, you can take pictures with your iPhone or your digital camera, you can send a hard copy by United States Postal Service, or you can drop a copy by my office. Any of those ways would be fine. Let me point out that if you use United States Postal Service, it may take a couple of days to get to me depending on how far away you are. So allow time. You might notice that the due date for the final project is the last day of exams. There can be no grace period for that. If I haven't gotten it by the end of exams, I'm not even going to look for assignments after that. I'm just going to grade papers and post grades, and that'll be it. So please make sure you get it to me before that point. I know that there are tools online that will create comics for you, and that's fine if you want to use them for some of the assignments and go above and beyond. But for your final project, I need for you to draw your own pictures. I want you to draw the specific images that help convey the specific message you're trying to communicate. So if you broke your mom's couch when you were a kid, I want to know what the couch looked like. Did you break the leg off? Did you break it in half? What were you doing? Who was helping you? All of those particular details will make your story different and stand out from all the others. So I don't want to see generic images or generalizations. It will help if you decide what you're going to try to communicate earlier in the semester. There are assignments that have you create rough drafts, and if you're creating a rough draft of your actual final project, you'll be that much farther along. Now that I've given you an idea of what to expect and what I expect, let's address the question of why would anyone communicate with the comics medium anyway? Does the medium matter? Well, imagine a lover breaking up with his partner by email instead of face-to-face. Would that make a difference? I think it would. I think it would make a big difference. I think the medium makes a big difference in what you're trying to communicate. Comics creators use images to portray the background, facial expressions, gestures, body language in general, and they use text for intangibles like justice and freedom, and for narration. So we might put a text above me that says, 5 minutes ago. An image might show me with a blank look on my face. A couple of images might show my eyes going back and forth. Maybe a little speech balloon coming out that says, "Are we recording yet?" Which is indeed how I started this session. And a wider angle might show that I'm not teaching in a classroom at all. I could say that I'm teaching in an empty room. And if I said to you that I'm teaching in an empty room, you would imagine any empty room that you are familiar with. If I showed you an image of the room, you would know the particular room I'm teaching in. But if I drew you a picture, then I could emphasize those elements that would help communicate what I'm trying to say. I could draw myself in a tiny little cubicle, or I could draw myself in a huge cathedral-sized room with hundreds of chairs, all of them empty. I could draw a room with windows, with perhaps nothing going on outside, or perhaps everything going on outside. Whatever my particular message is, I can tailor the images to help communicate it. Let's move on and talk a little bit about comics history. When you read McCloud, you're going to get his version of comics history, and I'm not going to start as far back as McCloud does. Comics scholar Thierry Smolderen explains that comics became popular in the 19th century because they helped sell newspapers. At that time, comics were purely for entertainment, and they helped sell newspapers because the images were cute, weird, absurd, and what Smolderen calls swarming. A swarming image is a very detailed image with lots of stuff going on. An example would be cartoonist R.F. Occult's picture of the Yellow Kid visiting Coney Island. This is an image with rides and attractions and people standing in line and people in weird situations and predicaments, very busy, like a Where's Waldo picture. That would be a swarming image. As comics evolved, they moved from being just a picture on a newspaper page to having pages of their own, and having groups of pages, and finally being little booklets of their own. And comics began to be used for educational purposes and for horror and superhero stories. Robert C. Harvey writes that in the 1960s, comics creators began to use the medium for their own personal expression. And he feels that by the 1980s, the medium had matured into literature. Relatively recent discussion in the comics scholarly community has revolved around what are the essential elements of comics. Smolderen feels that the essential elements are those elements that made comics popular in the first place. So images that are cute, weird, absurd, and swarming. When you read McCloud, you will find that he feels that a sequence of images that tell a narrative are what's important. Many scholars agree with McCloud, but not all of them. Hilary Shute and Will Eisner, for example, feel that you must have sequential images interrelated with text, that if you don't have text, you don't have a comic. Harvey takes this a step farther and feels that you need to have speech balloons in order to have a comic. He explains that you have a visual representation of the body and a visual representation of the sound of speech. And that would include different colors and sizes and shapes of fonts that help communicate your message. So he feels the essential elements of comics are sequential images that tell a story and speech balloons. That would distinguish the text from traditional literature, the text in traditional literature from the text in the comics. Modern comics include all kinds of genres. Superheroes and manga are really popular, as you might know. There's also comics about social commentary and comics that deal with things like the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and the attack on the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. And as comics have broadened to include more subjects, they have gained more recognition. The literary community has awarded awards to several comics, and I took note of some so I could tell you about them. Chris Ware's Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth, in 2001 won a Guardian Prize for Best First Book. And Spiegelman's Mouse, which we'll be reading excerpts of, was nominated in 1986 for the National Book Critics Circle Award in Biography. And his book, too, in 1992, won a special Pulitzer Prize. That's kind of amazing to me. Comics have come all that way. And not only are they gaining recognition from the literary community, but from academia as well. There are more and more scholarly journals, more and more articles being published about comics, special issues of journals devoted to comics, more university and college courses like this one about comics, and some universities and colleges have programs so you can get a degree in comics, and of course an online presence There's all kinds of online comics, online journals devoted to comics, and blogs about comics. Well, I hope that will give you some feeling about the field, maybe get you a little bit interested in it, and I'm sure it's enough for me to tell you today. Thanks.